Welcome. This is the annual spring meeting for the 4th Ward. Actually, it's no longer spring. Sorry about that. We didn't have the meeting as planned back on April 15th, but hopefully you agree, better late and virtual than never. I'm Ray Bushman. This is my 4th Ward meeting. By way of background, I became involved with city government in 2003. Appointed to the Building Review Board, served 6 years, 4 as chairman. Then I was appointed to the Legal Committee, serving 6 years with 5 years as chairman of the Legal Committee. In 2016, my predecessor, Alderman Mike Alderman, decided to retire a little early. I was asked to fill his shoes and did so, and then was elected to the position in 2017 and again in 2019. As many of you know, your other alderman in the prior spring meetings was Michelle Marino, who served for her full 6-year term. Do miss her, but I'm honored and pleased to introduce your new alderman who joined the council this May, Alderman Eileen Luby Weber. Eileen?
Thank you, Ray. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I've attended many ward meetings in the past as a resident and was on the other side of the table. So it's exciting to be here to present to you our exciting things happening in the city of Lake Forest. For those of you who don't know me, my husband Brian and I have lived here, married for 8 years. We have 2 boys. Michael's a kindergartner at St. Mary's, and my son Edward is at the Gorton Drop-In Center a few days a week. And I operate Lake Forest Flowers, so you can always find me there. But I've been involved with the Cemetery Commission and served on a number of working groups and other city volunteer areas. So I'm excited to be here.
Eileen, certainly you're new to the council, but not new to the community. Next slide, please. Next slide. I usually begin with a greeting of good to see everyone, but unfortunately the best we can do is virtual. I'm sure you understand, and hopefully we can accommodate our agenda without too many technical difficulties. We plan to provide an update on things happening in the city. Will take around 45 minutes and then go to a Q&A, spending time answering, or at least trying to answer, your questions. As some of you may recall, at last year's ward meeting, which was held in the basement of the number 2 fire station, we filled the room and went an hour beyond our targeted time. So this time we're going to try and keep things moving and on schedule. And actually afterwards, maybe for some of us, we'll have time to check in on how the Bears are doing and try to get the Bears back on the winning track tonight. If you want to submit questions during the presentation, please hit the chat button and type in your question or comment, and we will try to address it, like I say, in the Q&A session. Next, please. Let's begin with the dollars and cents. We all get daily reminders through the news of this being a difficult and challenging year for many. Even in the area of government finance, we hear about deficit spending, unbalanced budgets, unmanageable debt. But glad to say, here in Lake Forest, we have good news to share with you on our city's finances. The city is on a May 1 through April 30th fiscal year. So although the budget process was well along before the pandemic hit us, we did have the opportunity before the start date of May 1 to make some to make some last minute adjustments to the FY21 budget to reflect the expected impact on revenues such as reduced sales tax and parks and rec fees. Yet we made it a point to still maintain a balanced budget. I also am happy to report that we've continued to maintain the best credit rating of AAA. This past December, we undertook a refinancing, and In the refinancing, we were able to take advantage of many of the low interest rates that are out there. And we were able to achieve a significant reduction in our interest costs to the tune of, I think it was 1.3 million. And yes, 1.3 million over the life of the outstanding bonds that we were refinanced. The interest rate that we were to achieve for our debt is 1.75%. And this resulted, even for this being the first fiscal year of the change, in a nice savings of $317,000. We've been able to maintain strong reserves to protect against the unknown, and we've been proactive to address the pension costs. The pension costs and the issues there will be discussed more later. Despite the funding challenges posed by the pandemic, the city has been able to allot $10 million in fiscal year 21 to address capital funding needs. The biggest project that we foresee in the future is the Burr Oak Storm Sewer project that now has been deferred to FY22, a project that is estimated to cost about $5.2 million. Next, please. To give you a little insight on our budget, and I'm just going to do it in a very general fashion. Citywide, we have revenues of some $87,525,000, expenses of a very similar amount of $87,083. For fiscal year 21, it is balanced. And if you look at the revenue side of the equation, the property tax revenue account for 34% of our citywide revenue. And on the expense side, personnel costs account for about 41% of the citywide expenses. Next slide, please. More than 40% of our revenues and expenses goes into what we call the general fund. It is primarily the operating fund and accounts for many of the city's departments and personnel. Here you can see where the different expenses are broken down into. Property tax revenue accounts for 56% of general fund revenue. And on the expense side, the personnel costs account for more than 70% of general fund expenses. Next slide, please. For this fiscal year, FY21, our budget is balanced with the projected revenues. No, I said that, I'm sorry. This chart shows the allocation of expenses by city department in the general fund. Public safety accounts for 52% of the general fund expenses. Public works, which is including engineering, streets, sanitation, storm sewers, etc., accounts for 22% of the general fund expenses. Next slide, 7. If we look at all expenses citywide beyond the general fund, this slide shows the allocation of expenses by city department. You will see that there's 3 major categories in expenses. One is public safety, which includes police and fire, which accounts for 22% of citywide expenses. Public works, which again is the engineering, street sanitation, storms, sewers, our fleet, our water and sanitary facilities. They account for 23% of the citywide expenses. And the other major component is parks and recs. They account for 18% of citywide expenses. And again, these 3 total about 63%, others being not as significant in the overall expense column. Next slide, please. As for pension funding, we all need to recognize that the State General Assembly is the one who establishes the rules for pensions. They govern the benefit, but they leave to the municipalities like our city the funding requirement at the local level. The city has over time looked at this as a significant issue going forward, a problem as to how we're going to fund it for the long-term future. And we've tried to take on some conservative steps so that we don't find ourselves in a major problem down the road. One of the things we've done is over time phased in more conservative actuarial assumptions, including most recently, the council decided to reduce the investment return assumption to 6.5% this fiscal year. This does require an increase in contributions, but puts the city in a much better position to address the long-term financial challenges. And I direct you to the graph where the blue shows if we don't do anything, how the costs will continue to escalate. Our efforts have been to flatten that line and to avoid ever increasing future costs. And we've been successful in taking various steps to do that. And we look at now the red line as being a more flat, fair, and manageable fundraising obligation that we are looking to achieve going forward. Eileen, since 34% of our city's revenues come from property taxes, could you give us a little more information on property taxes?
Absolutely, thank you. So I'm excited to say that Lake Forest has the lowest property tax in Lake County again this year. And one of the things I want to highlight is that fire, parks, and recreation, as well as the library operations, fall under the city's tax levy, whereas they are independent tax districts in many of the other communities. So this really provides our community with efficiency and cost savings for us as taxpayers. Next slide, please. So the question is, where do your property taxes go? And this pie chart shows a really great example. You see that 22% comes to us, the city, and then the other entities, which is the yellow box to the left there, the 12%, that includes things like College of Lake County, the Forest Preserve District, Sanitary District, and Township. And then we have Lake County, 11%, and then our two school districts, 115 and 67, make up over 50% of our taxes. So that's something to note as well. Next slide, please. Financial transparency is really important for our community. The city has added this to the website. You can locate it right on the homepage, and this is some snapshots here that you'll see on the homepage, and you can access that. You can find financial reports, you can access online financial data portal, you can view pension information and property tax data. In this past year, they also added the online check register of all the disbursements made by the city and the city's first budget in a brief document. Next slide, please. As COVID-19 has impacted all of us, it has impacted the city's budget. However, year to date, the city financials are tracking better than projected in FY21 budget, and the most recent update can be found on the city's website. We've had monthly updates at our council meetings, as well as they've also approved, the city council approved a local business grant providing support to the business community. And as a small business owner, it's really important that they've emphasized small businesses. So these are businesses that can operate no more than 4 locations. Next slide, please. Another really exciting thing to note is the Lake Forest real estate market. As you can see highlighted here on this chart from FY17 up to FY21, the little green line is ticking much higher than anticipated. We're well ahead of budget projections for the real estate transfer tax. We've had 108 homes are under contract as of September 15th. So that's really exciting. Next slide, please. Again, this is just another comparison looking at the real estate transfer tax. And what I want to highlight is down on the far right column at the bottom. As of August 31st of this year, the average sales price is over $900,000. So it's nice to see that creeping up, which means some of those homes that are probably above the 1 to 2, 3 million range that have been sitting on the market for a while have moved. So it's a positive thing to see. Next slide, please. Ray, I'll turn it over to you for the bluff.
Thank you very much. And Eileen, just to add one point about the COVID-19 impact on the city and what we've done. At our last meeting, the City Council approved a resolution for staff to work with our local businesses on what we called an individualized assistance plan. And this is something that is intended to be flexible to try and recognize the different needs of our businesses to help them get through these difficult times. So I view that as really positive.
Thank you.
In terms of the bluff, we don't always have great news to share, and the bluff has had some challenges for us of late. To give you a little history, in 2017, we did see some improvements were necessary at the south end of the beach. We built a retaining wall and we regraded the bluff. The following summer, early in 2018 summer, June, I believe, we experienced unfortunate collapse of the bluff onto the North Beach access road. This obviously disrupted our plans for enjoying a nice summer at the beach, although our folks did a great job making the beach still available throughout, although with certain limitations. But it also took a great deal of effort to deal with the problem, what was needed to solve the bluff collapse issue, to reestablish it with the appropriate stability. And we brought in a lot of dirt, a lot of fill, and we're happy to report in 2019, we completed the project, unfortunately a little after the end of the summer, but we established a new North Beach access road. We regraded the bluff so to provide more stability. And we did restoration in the ravine there to the north, and that's all been completed. We continue to monitor the situation. We do recognize that there's a lot of area of the bluff that has not been dealt with. Mike, could you go to the next slide, please? So here you'll see, we have a large bluff area that borders our Lake Park Beach, Forest Park Beach, and we took care of the stabilized the both ends, but we are continuing to monitor the middle. We're continuing to look at what may be needed in the future to provide the appropriate stability. And to the extent we can identify needs, we want to make sure that we factor those into our financial planning. But this is an ongoing effort. We never know for sure what Mother Nature is going to throw at us in the future. But let's go down to the beach. Eileen, can you take us to the beach?
Yes, thank you, Ray. So just to follow up on Ray's comments, this historic high water levels combined with the impactful winter did cause some damage. Ray talked about that. And he talked about the extensive restoration. So what was really exciting was how the city staff pulled everything together for the opening for Memorial Day. I was down there as they were working and they moved tons and tons and tons of sand and graded and smoothed and really did a beautiful job. And boy, have we enjoyed an amazing summer down there. I hope all of you have taken advantage of it. Even this beautiful, we'll call Indian summer, we have the next couple of days. They're saying 80 degrees tomorrow. I can't believe it. We've had record visits down for the summer. I believe the numbers were around 130,000 people this year compared to around 80,000 last year. So really an excellent asset of ours as the city continues to protect it and keep it as a great place for all of us to enjoy. Next slide, please. This is again kind of reiterating what we've mentioned. Erosion problems are not just for us, it's all along the North Shore, as well as many of our residents in the First Ward have experienced as well in protecting their bluff. The City Council is going to consider a number of different things. We're looking at existing data versus prior programs. We're looking at the original beach construction data, since the lake levels are about the same height as at that time when the beach was redone. We're analyzing coastal processes in high water. We're developing a beach restoration plan and developing long-term monitoring and maintenance. So the beach is going to stay a topic for us as we continue to move through our budgeting and analysis process. Next slide, please. Ray, I'll let you take it again. Do you have anything to add, Ray, to the beach? We could talk on and on and on about the high lake levels.
Well, no, but one other comment about the beach. We use the phrase quite frequently, calling it a crown jewel of our city. And the fact that we had such a great turnout this past summer, albeit with the COVID-19, people were looking forward, obviously, to that wonderful outdoor vista. But it does say that we do have a crown jewel here, and we're going to try and do what we can to make sure it continues for generation after generation. But the weather has not only been a challenge for us at our bluffs and our beach, it's also had some impact in our neighborhoods. The increased rainfall translates, unfortunately, to increased storm runoff. That needs to go somewhere, and it continues to require many challenges in maintaining and improving our stormwater system here in the city. One of the things that did occur recently is based upon the new data, a new design model was developed for stormwaters, looking at 10, 50, 100-year storms, and was recently updated, and the city was one of the first to adopt these new standards in designing future stormwater systems that look basically to design for an increased capacity in the future. We did complete last summer a stormwater project, Old Elm, Forest Hill Road, Timber Lane. This is an area just east of Green Bay Road. And actually, besides the storm sewers being upgraded there, we also did some water main improvements and road improvements. In the process of just about being completed is the East Skokie Drainage District project. This is a project not handled by the city. It's under the jurisdiction of the Skokie Drainage District. And again, they look to complete that work the end of November. That's over in Ward 2. Did mention earlier that a big project we have coming up is the Burr Oak Storm Sewer. This is a major storm sewer project in an area that's north of Kelmscott and west of the high school across the tracks. There's been design work done, and the redesign work has been done to try and get control of the cost and try and figure out the best way to solve the problem of the flooding that's been occurring in that area and where that drainage can go. We have a challenge with the railroad tracks there, or a challenge with the water flow going into ravine and eventually out into Lake Michigan. But we think we do have a good project coming up. The price tag we expect to be about $5.2 million. And we are undertaking efforts to get state funding, hopefully in the amount of 50% of the cost for this project. And all of which says that the earliest we'll probably see this project begin would be the February, March of next year. but hopefully it does go forward. It's a very interesting engineering project. I'd like to note that we did receive from one of our residents before this meeting tonight a question from the resident asking about storm sewer issues, and so I'd suggest we defer to the Q&A time to have that question posed, and we'll get into more about how the city prioritizes and schedules storm sewer projects. Now, the infamous flooding of Deerpath and 41. Next slide, please. I think you see something familiar. Hopefully none of you have ever gotten stuck down there, but unfortunately it's an all too familiar sight. Relief is finally on its way, hopefully. Next slide, please. This flooding problem is the jurisdiction of the state, Illinois Department of Transportation. They've been working to develop a project to resolve the viaduct flooding. We're finally at the stage of them planning to construct a new pump station, some stormwater infrastructure, detention basins that will go into the golf course. The pump station will be located at the southwest corner of 41 and Deerpath off of Awani Lane. And the retention basins, or ponds as I call them, will be in the golf course, and hopefully adding to the challenges of the golfers to avoid their ball going in the water. The golf course restoration will be designed and managed by the city. And when the project is totally completed, again, at the expense of the state, we will take over jurisdiction for the pump station, and it'll be our responsibility going forward for maintenance. But hopefully it will solve the problem that's been a headache that we've all witnessed time and again, and unfortunately too many times. Next slide, please. Just to cover the timing on it, state bid opening September 18th, construction's targeted for early 21, finish time of 2022, and should not miss this point, this is going to impact traffic in the area when the construction goes on, and the city will try and maintain close communication with the public and communicate issues, how to avoid, how to get around, and what the timing is. But do keep in mind that from the year plus, we may have a little bit of a traffic hiccup, but hopefully all this will be worth it, and we can solve the problem going forward. Next slide, please.
Ray, can I just make one comment? To make sure that you are on top of communications, I highly recommend that you sign up for the email blast from the city. You can do that directly on the website, and or if you're on social media, they do post through Facebook and Instagram. So I highly recommend that you stay engaged that way. It's a great way to stay in touch with some of these notices.
Thank you, Eileen. That is important. And again, we have a great website. We're continuing to work on the website. It's not part of our presentation. We expect to make further improvements. I think for the time I've been on the council, I think our website has dramatically improved over time. And I know our folks are looking to continue making further improvements there. Next slide, please. Another subject I'm sure near and dear to many of our hearts is the streets, the resurfacing, and the repair. It is a major undertaking for the city. We have, I believe, more than 100 miles of streets under our jurisdiction. We do have a program in place to try and figure out what's needed to be done and when it is needed, when it does get done. We do have an outside contractor. This is the type of vehicle they drive that evaluates our city streets every 3 years. They segment it into 880 linear feet intervals, and then they assign a variety of payment condition scores. Our goal is to maintain an overall score of 77 or greater. You'll see back in 2010, we averaged around a 77. 2019, we've made it up to 80, and hopefully we can continue to improve on that number. Next slide, please. This gives you an idea. Marlane Drive had a score of 54, and Oak Knoll Drive had a nice score of 82. Next slide, please. Over the past 2 years, last year, FY 2020, in our ward, there were street repairs, resurfacing in James Court, James Street, and Oak Barn Lane, which was a broader project there. And then FY 21, current fiscal year, we have Oak Knoll Drive, Stable Lane, Wilshire Road for resurfacing. And again, that's just our ward. It's occurring in all 4 wards year after year. Next slide, please. Well, do we think it's time to start thinking of winter and snow? Even though today is beautiful, tomorrow's going to be beautiful, our city has not ignored those questions. And they have been working on plans for how to deal with snow plowing and salting for the upcoming winter. Many of you probably experienced problems in the past in driving Route 43 Waukegan Road or Route 60 Town Line Road in years past. And as a matter of fact, it got so bad 2 years ago that we said we had to do something about it. All we got was excuses from the state about how they have such difficulty plowing those areas, that we undertook in December of last year to undertake responsibility for the plowing and salting of Route 43 and 60. We viewed it as a pilot program. We did get compensated for our services. It covered fully our costs. And we felt it was successful, and hopefully you agreed with that. Being successful, we did sit down and negotiate again with IDOT, the state of Illinois, to come up with another program, a 1-year program for this year, 2020-21 winter. And again, we look to cover our costs, and it'll be our vehicles, our people out there plowing and salting these 2 major thoroughfares, and hopefully provide the safety that our citizens expect. Beyond this year, because it's worked out so well, we are thinking very positively of entering into a long-term arrangement with the state, and that's something that will hopefully be developed before we get into the 21-22 winter, and again, provide the safety that our citizens expect. Next slide, please. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Everett and Waukegan Road intersection. And some of you may remember year after year after year talk of doing some improvements at that intersection. It's taken some time. According to the information I got, it was initiated back in 2009. We're getting there, but we're still not there. The current project that is being looked at, and we hope will be starting shortly, is to provide an additional right lane for the southbound Waukegan Road traffic to the westbound Everett Road, and also to lengthen both the left and right turn lanes on eastbound Everett, both to go north or south on Waukegan Road, and also to provide for lengthening of the left turn lane for westbound Everett Road traffic to southbound Waukegan Road. The estimated cost of this project is about $3 million. It's expected to be funded 80% by federal grant, 20% by the city. The city will also incur other costs in connection with this project because it's going to require some upgrading of the signaling and change of the signaling for the railroad tracks, the Metro tracks just to the west of there. And actually, Metro is going to undertake a signaling project that will include not just at Everett, but also Conway, Old Mill, and Route 22 to the south. These additional costs may add about $1 million to the city to get this done. As of today, we expect the bids to go out, as we said, in early 2023. You may ask why 2023. The main reason for that is Metra needs to do its signaling work in advance. And they plan to start on that in spring of 2021. And that's going to take a good year. And that's why the actual construction in the roadway will occur at a later time. But hopefully we don't experience much more delays, and hopefully we'll all be satisfied and happy once this work is completed. Next slide, please. Eileen?
Thank you. And I'll just note too, because as the fourth ward, many of us are west of those train tracks. They're expecting that Everett from Waukegan to Telegraph will be closed the entire summer during the roadway construction. So again, another major construction project that will affect many of us heading east. And I, again, encourage you to stay in touch with the communications that are out there. On a happy note, we have a few residential developments. We have the Oak Knoll Woodlands project, that's 16 lots. We've nearly completed the infrastructure and the construction is expected next year. We've got the Wesley Farm, which has 34 lots, and construction of that is underway. And then thirdly, the Preserve at Wesley, and they're expecting the clearing work between this year and next year. You can see there the plan of Oak Knoll Woodlands, the single family, and then the slide below. Next slide, please. So this is also really exciting. Ray gives me all the exciting slides to talk about. Pending review, the southeast corner of Everett and Waukegan Road. So that's formerly the gas station and the Pasquazzi's that used to be there. That's two sites consolidated. We're looking, they're looking at a medical office building of 3 stories, a retail building, and you can see the plan there. It is a little hard to read, but please follow the Plan Commission and Building Review Board actions. Those will be coming up in the next couple months and will be on their agendas. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that and stay informed. It's much more pleasant. We're hearing, I should say, Ray and I are hearing much more pleasant things than has been in the past about recommended developments at that site. So,
Eileen, if I could add,
sure.
Having lived through, and the folks having lived through the prior proposed development for that site, this one, as Eileen said, has the 2 buildings. The one on the north is planned or is requested to be a drive-through type of building, but I've been assured that restrictions will not allow any bank to occur there. And also just to give you a little more update on the current review process. It did have a good full hearing for the Plan Commission, and I think it was a very productive session. There is a little bit further refinement being done by the developer with the plan to come back before the Plan Commission in December. I understand that the developer did a wonderful job reaching out to the neighbors, the community, being very informative on the different plans as they were being developed. And but as Eileen said, if you have comments, if you have an opinion or want to have input, You still have the opportunity of submitting it, and the way to the Plan Commission, the way to do that is send it to Kathy Cerniak. She's the Director of Community Development at the city. Send it to Kathy Cerniak, and she will be sure to see any of your comments and input does get to the Plan Commission. So again, now's the time to speak up if you have something that you want to say about the project. Eileen?
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So the Route 60 corridor, technically third ward, but we feel that we all take advantage of and we drive past many of these areas often, so we wanted to highlight them in our presentation tonight. The Hyatt Place Hotel is being built. It's scheduled to open up this spring. I know they're very much hoping that COVID can move along so that people are back into the office park working. It's a little quiet over there right now. They will have a restaurant and a bar and lots of meeting spaces as well as space for events. And I believe they're looking for a chef for their restaurant. So if anyone knows of one, they can pass that information along.
How about a bartender?
Right, maybe we could be guest bartenders, right? Amberley Woods commercial development is still in planning stage. I don't have anything more to report on that. And the bicycle and pedestrian trail, the north side of Route 60, is also being worked on. So some exciting things happening there. Next slide, please. Talk a little bit about Gaslight Conversion. This was initiated in the summer of 2018. What's really exciting is that there's no change in illumination to the fixture or the fixture itself. So it remains the same. However, the city anticipates saving $50,000 a year at gas and natural gas costs and about $27,000 a year on maintenance costs. So that's a pretty big number when you add things up. You're showing here, this map is showing what's happened in the 4th Ward. So over on Old Mill Ridge, Shofford Way, and as well as happening in Villa Turcom. And then the South Park Gaslight Conversion is scheduled to begin this fall. Next slide, please. So Rethink Recycling, this has become a little bit near and dear to my heart since I came into this position as a volunteer, and with COVID affecting all of us, and we're home and eating at home and yet getting a lot of takeout. Just a little bit of background information. The Lake Forest Garden Club gifted $110,000 to fund an educational campaign on recycling. The goal was to reduce the contamination from 25% rate to 10% rate. Now, it's unfortunate that school is really not in session as we used to know it. However, the city has been pushing this information out through the dialogue, through social media. Bart the Cart is on many of the garbage trucks. And so those are the ways that it's been coming out. I don't know if any of you have seen those advertisements or marketing efforts, but I've been seeing them. In fact, I was walking my son around the block the other day. It was Tuesday for recycling in our neighborhood. And I actually was kind of appalled at all of the contaminants in my neighbor's recycling bins that were sticking out the top. No, I was not digging in them. They were hanging out. But things like you can see in this image here, plastic bags holding garbage, takeout styrofoam containers, hangers, plastic toys, plastic garden pots, shopping bags with the rope handles. Those are all contaminants. And if we all do our part to avoid the contamination, we'll reach a $50,000 annual savings. So let's all do our part. If you have questions, you can certainly reach out. The good news is that the city's recycling processor is holding the processing costs due to the community educational effort. But to think about it, if we just keep throwing things into the recycling bins that shouldn't be there, really they should just go in the trash. So everyone should make a conceded effort to recycle correctly. And also I learned K-cups are not recyclable. So it's another one that should go in the trash. Next slide, please. Environmental sustainability, we have a new committee, standing committee in the city council that's led by Alderman Rummel. And she is working towards continuing the city's long history of proactive environmental and eco-conscious policy and planning. And they're going to be responsible for keeping environmental, conservation, and sustainability topics at the forefront of our decision making. One of the projects underway includes community solar program. We did receive a question in advance to our meeting tonight regarding solar, so I'm going to touch on that. The city is the city is supporting a new municipally sponsored community solar program. The program will offer residents the opportunity to subscribe a portion of their home's energy uses to a solar farm that provides energy into the ComEd power grid. So those who subscribe will not only be supporting renewable energy investment locally, but will also receive on-bill credits from ComEd, reducing their energy supplies. This is through MC Squared. So MC Squared is the company that we should sign up. Residents who sign up and engage will be eligible to receive 20% guaranteed savings through on-bill credits based on the total quantity of community solar subscription they secure. This information can also, be found online. So you can see cityoflakeforest.com community solar is the link. And then there will be a postcard coming out. You can see an example of what it looks like. So that way you've got the correct information. So I hope that answers the question we received. And we can also reiterate that during our Q&A. Something else I wanted to point out that I've taken on is the Earth Machine. You can purchase for $55 this Earth Machine for composting. It's really interesting to see how that works. It's very easy. I will tell you, it does not smell, doesn't smell at all, doesn't attract animals, does not attract bees. And I can talk about it because I have one. And it's been really fun with my children this year, taking the food scraps that are fruits and vegetables, even things like shrimp tails, wine corks, coffee grounds, even some of the basic yard waste, leaves and things can go in there. And I started that in April, and now we have worms living in there. So for those of you who are into gardening or composting, it's a really easy way to help our environment. And I highly encourage you to contact our Public Works Department if you'd like to take advantage of that. Another note for those of us in the 4th Ward who do our own yard work, I'm one of them. The Compost and Recycling Center hours until December 1st are Saturdays 8 to 5 and Sundays 9 to 5. And then after December 1st, we have to make sure you get all of our leaves up by then. They'll be open Saturdays from 8 to 3. Next slide, please. Just a couple of other quick public service announcements. We want to get to the Q&A session. A reminder to please lock up. As you can see, we've had still a number of car thefts and car burglaries. 96% of the stolen cars have the key fob left inside of the unlocked car. So let's just be smart. I know we used to be able to do that. As born and raised in Lake Forest, I remember we could just leave things open. Now is not the case anymore. So please lock up. Next slide, please. And another safety opportunity for us is to sign up for Smart 911. It's a safety profile that travels with you and is visible, participating 911 centers nationwide. You can see the number of what you can include on the profiles. You can include as little information or as much as you want, and you can go back and update or add at any time. So you can go to the city's website or smart911.com to create an account. I highly recommend that as well. Next slide, please. So Ray and I will just talk a little bit about supporting your community. We want to encourage you to still continue to support the local businesses, institutions, and nonprofit organizations. I'll highlight that our rec department has done an amazing job offering programs both virtually and in person during COVID and continuing this fall. Some of the events are even sold out, I heard. Cracktoberfest, I went to it this past weekend, and we have another one coming up on the 18th at Elua and the Wildlife Discovery Center. Also, there's an Open Lands native tree plant sale scheduled for October 17th outside Melody Farm. Ray, do you want to talk about some of the other efforts that were made last year?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on a point. Last year, 2019, in the summer, we were successful due to the wonderful job of some local volunteers to put on some programs at our West Side train station. They did one on wellness, they did one on volunteering, and they did one on food, or what they called the foodie fair. And I had a nice turnout for those three events, here on the west side at our west train station. And the Chamber of Commerce of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff sponsored a vintage and luxury auto show in the summer of 2019. Had over 100 vehicles there, and that was very successful, a good large turnout. I was hoping that we could do a repeat of these more local community events here, take advantage of the parking area and the West train station for that. But obviously the 2020 pandemic had a different result. But anyways, whenever we get back to the normal or the new normal, hopefully we can continue to provide community events. But as Eileen said, we're doing a fantastic job citywide to keep things going, and hopefully you all get over to the Haunted Trail at Northcroft Park. With that, I think the next slide, I think says it. We've completed it, not too much over the time limit. And now's the time for Q&A. And I'm going to ask our city manager, let me introduce him, Jason Wisha. Jason, I'm wondering if you'd do the honors of telling us what questions our citizens would like answers to.
Sure. Thank you very much. And very nice job tonight, Alderman Bushman and Weber. Hopefully that was very informative for the residents. And just as a reminder to those on the call, again, the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen can be used to submit any questions that you have. As was noted earlier, we did receive a few questions in advance of the meeting, and so I will read those now. The first question we received was an inquiry expressing concern regarding the Everett Park Pond overflowing onto White Oak Road and Telegraph Road, as well as a broader question about the city's methodology for prioritizing stormwater projects in the community. Yes,
that concern was expressed, I know, a few months ago, and Eileen and I were aware of it, and we did get involved. The question raised, as I see it, is, how does the city determine what stormwater projects we should be doing next? And there is a methodology there, and Jason, or whether you wanted to defer to our Director of Public Works, could you tell the citizens how we try and prioritize and time our stormwater projects?
Absolutely, and I'll ask Public Works Director Mike Thomas to address that question.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Bushman, Alderman Weber, and residents at home. Excellent question, a question that we get asked obviously many a time a year, especially when we have the melt in the spring and heavy rains. Just some background information. We, the city, have outside studies performed on our infrastructure. So that helps us at a staff level really present very objective analyses on everything from our roads, our bridges, storm sewers, ravines, bluff, capital equipment, buildings, all of that we've had studies on. Specifically with storm sewers, we had a study back in '91, another one in 2000, a large one in 2014, and then we updated it in 2019. The area of White Oak and Telegraph in 2014, that project was listed, I believe, third on our list. We then, if you can remember, these past 5 or 6 years had a heck of a lot of rain, and that prompted us to update our storm sewer study. Again, had an outside engineering firm review all of our data, all of our flooding data, looking at all the data they've received from Lake County Stormwater Management. They came back and revised their list, but essentially what they do is they look at the number of properties that would benefit from the improvement. They would look then at the cost. They also then would sort of weigh that into the timing of where, for example, if we have a resurfacing project or a water main replacement project, well, it makes sense then to go ahead and bring that storm sewer project forward as we're going to be digging up the street, those types of things. So all of that then is put together, it's weighted, and then it's ranked. The Telegraph in White Oak is currently number 5. Assuming Burr Oak proceeds next year, we then have 4 more projects. It will be the 4th one on the list. So we are aware of it. We have other areas in town that have very similar situations, and we hope to get to that soon. So I hope that answers the question.
Mike, maybe to expand on one item of the different factors that go into your rating system, and you talk about the number of properties affected. Is there a difference as to the type of effect on the property? Namely, is it in the street? Is it in your yard? Is it in your basement? Is that a major distinction?
Correct. Yes. So, excuse me, Alderman Bushman, you are absolutely correct. There is more weight given if it is impacting people's homes, multiple residents, multiple homes. More weight is given to that. Obviously, roadways, if the roadways are flooding, and then yards. So all of that is taken into account, and that is ranked accordingly. But yes, you are correct. Those items our consultant used in putting together their rankings.
And this goes to another point I think it's important for our citizens to understand. If you as a citizen are experiencing problems, we encourage you, if anything, we plead for you to bring it to our attention, bring it to the city's attention. Mike Thomas has a wonderful department. I know his people there. I know what they do, and they do a wonderful job working with the citizen to the extent they encounter water retention problems, flooding problems, storm overflow problems. And they're there to serve you. And it's a twofold thing by making sure you contact the city when you encounter these problems. One, hopefully you can get relief, hopefully you get solution. But 2, it'll go into the database. And this is where the rating factor, again, the more problems that are attributable to a project, the better chance you have at moving up the ladder to get it done. And keep in mind, the buck does stop with the city council, and even though we put a lot of money towards the sewer system, we recognize that there may be demands, maybe needs to move projects up to put more money there. And if we have the luxury of the money, this is one area where I know I personally feel is very important. We continue to make improvements, as I mentioned earlier. We recognize that with weather conditions, things have changed, and flooding does now occur in areas that maybe before never flooded. But again, I ask the citizens to be cognizant of the great service our city can provide. So continue to contact them with any problems.
Alderman Bushman, if I may just put a finer point on that. We really encourage residents to contact us 24/7. And here is why. We need to see what is happening to that system. If we come and visit your home the next day and it's a blue sky out, that doesn't help us. That doesn't help us figure out if it is simply a pipe or an area that is surcharged and can no longer hold the volume, or if there truly is a problem with the city's infrastructure or potentially the homeowner's infrastructure. So non-regular business hours, you can call the non-emergency number. They will contact our guys in our water sewer section. I ask for patience. It might take us about an hour to get guys in, but we want to come see what's happening while it is occurring. So thank you, Mr. Bushman. That's a
thank you for that added point. It is very important.
And maybe one last point I would add to piggyback on a comment from Alderman Bushman in noting, the reassessment of funding strategies by the city council. Just for the audience's education, historically, as recently as about a year ago, the city's funding strategy was to address stormwater improvement project once every 3 years, when we had received some motor fuel tax funding that allowed us to divert street resurfacing funds for a stormwater project. Understanding the increasing severity of the rainfall, the increasing frequency of events within the community, the city council took that up last year and made a decision to try to accelerate funding for stormwater projects. So credit to the council, I think, for being responsive and understanding the increasing challenges that we face, not just in the community, but certainly at a regional level too, with the increased rainfall that we're experiencing.
Thank you.
So moving along, another question that we did receive prior to the meeting was inquiring about the presence of liquefied natural gas on freight trains traveling through Lake Forest, specifically asking whether the city has any legal recourse to prevent this, and whether residents and the city are aware of the dangers posed by liquefied natural gas and other hazardous materials more broadly that are transported by rail.
Jason, Ray, if you don't mind, I'll just touch on this and then turn it over to our experts. But we did, as a group, discuss this and looked at the jurisdiction that the city does not have over the freight lines. Jason, I think maybe we should talk about the city's protective plan and the safety that they have in case something was to happen, since we really don't have a say on what's traveling through our town.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to your point, unfortunately, and I know this is a point of concern for a lot of residents in any community that have rail lines passing through their jurisdiction, but we really don't have any ability to regulate railroad activities at a municipal level. That really falls under federal railroad policy. Certainly, we do work closely and communicate our concerns to our federal elected officials and encourage residents to do the same. But to Alderman Weber's point, our public safety responders do a tremendous job in their training and preparedness for hazardous material incidents. And so I would be happy to ask Fire Chief Pete Siebert to weigh in on this a little more.
Do you got me on the sound there?
Yeah.
We hear you, Pete.
All right. Good points brought up there about some of the railroads in town. I'll just add for our preparedness that we train regularly in hazardous materials. We do send all of our people to a basic hazmat awareness level, and then as they proceed through their career, they go to a hazmat operation level. And then we have a few people that are on the county hazmat team. I have one gentleman right now that's trained to the technician level. So they're really a higher level of training. And then with him and other people in my training division, they seek out advanced training in rail cars and responding to rail car emergencies. We sent a couple people out to Colorado for a class sponsored by Union Pacific Railroad. And I have a very good relationship with Matt Thompson, who's from the Union Pacific. He actually responded to our emergency in 2017 and has been a valuable resource since. Sent me a lot of information about some of the liquefied natural gas rail car design that they've been testing out. And while there's a lot of concerns about some of the, carrying these materials, I will say that they have been advancing the design of these rail cars to make them safer in the event of an emergency, something that we appreciate. But we do train regularly on this and make sure that all of our people can spot the different types of rail cars and what hazards they may bring to us. We do have a lot of technology on our side as well. Something that came out of our rail emergency was an app we call Ask Rail that is made specifically for responders. Been very helpful for me when I see a freight train going down the tracks. I can look up and I can find out what is in every single car, how full it is, where the engine's located, how many cars are on that train. So it's just been a great tool. And like I said, we always just continue to advance our training and stay up to date as much as we can on this stuff, and also update our emergency operations plan if we ever had to respond to a major incident. So not getting too deep into all that, I hope that answers some of the questions for you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
It does give us comfort to know our capabilities internally and the ongoing effort to improve the rail system. The one comment I'd like to add is the fact that in a way we went through a similar question when we faced the addition of a holding track in our community, and the concern whether this would be a way of increasing freight traffic, and recognizing we don't control what is on the freight cars, whether it's flammable, volatile, hazardous material, or something harmless, or even empty cars. But it was a concern, and we have to recognize that this is regulated at the federal level, and we should be sensitive to what happens, work through our congressional delegation if we really want to take a stand, to be vocal there. And but something I certainly personally continue to see what improvements we can make in this area going forward to provide a safer environment for all of us. Any other questions, Jason?
Yeah, we've had a few more come in. So the next question we received is a follow-up to the discussion that you had on the crossing improvements, or the intersection improvements, I should say, at Everett Road and Waukegan. Specifically, the question is asking about a dedicated right turn lane for westbound Everett as it's approaching Waukegan Road. And we can pull that back up, but if either of you would like to jump in, feel free. If not, I certainly would welcome any comments from
Jason, I know you and your staff are much more familiar with particularly the southeast corner, and I know the new project that they're looking to put in has some modifications there. So if you can give more particulars, I think that would be great.
Absolutely, and I will ask, again, Public Works Superintendent Bob Ells to answer this question.
Thank you, Jason. To clarify for the resident, no, there is not a dedicated turn lane in this design going westbound and then turning north onto Waukegan Road. This question has come up several times in the past, and basically the biggest reason comes down to the proximity to the church on the corner. If you add another 13 feet along Everett Road alongside St. Pat's there, and then make an allowance for the sidewalk to be relocated north of that, you'd be right into the church building. There's also an issue on the front along 43 where that turn lane would be. It would take out the sidewalk and part of the entrance there into the church and also there is a just mass of utilities alongside the Waukegan Road, as most state corridors are, that would all have to be relocated, and there would be nowhere to put those because of the front main entrance to the church. So yes, that was looked at. It was discussed by council originally when this project was first initiated. It's been discussed several times over the last few years while the project's been in design. But once the grant funding was approved for the project, that kind of locked in the scope about a year and a half ago, and that funding was finally approved. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does, Bob. Thank you. Although I know we all would have liked to seen a right turn lane, but I know I was part of discussions earlier in past years, and it just wasn't feasible. Just was too difficult, and would at this point in time not work in terms of the overall project. Is there another question, Jason?
Yes, we've received a few more. So the next question is, what is the status of the studies to remodel or redevelop the library?
Slide on that?
Good question.
We do have a slide.
Eileen, do you want to take this, or?
I am just,
Kathy is also possibly, our director
yeah,
of community development has some background on this and details.
I think that would be great if Kathy could bring the resident up to date with the stand on that.
Sure. Thank you and good evening, everyone. First and foremost, the library project is a library project. It is not a city project. The library is not owned by the city. The library board, library staff, and various consultants have been working over many months to do considerable due diligence. That due diligence included a survey of residents, really to help the library board, working with their team, create a vision for what the future Lake Forest Library should be. And on October 19th, the library board and their team will be before the city council, as currently scheduled, to really describe, to talk about that vision, to talk about what the library of the future is. Their study has benefited from looking at other libraries that have recently expanded, but what we expect to occur on October 19th is really to begin the community discussion, to begin getting input from the city council, to make sure there's agreement around what that future library should be, who it will serve, how it will enhance and augment and collaborate with other institutions in town, as opposed to create duplicate activities, programs, or services. And then with that understanding of the vision, to really then understand what type of facility is needed to allow those types of programs, services, and activities to occur, and to provide flexibility for the future. How can the existing building serve future needs? What repairs are needed short-term and long-term? And is additional space needed? So October 19th is an important date, and that really will be the start of the community discussion. Certainly as this moves forward, depending on what the project ultimately is, there could be some review required by the city's Historic Preservation Commission, perhaps by the zoning board, and then we would expect that the city council would be asked to consider participation financially in some way. So again, October 19th really is the start date for that community discussion.
Thank you, Kathy.
Go on, Eileen.
So for further information, join us on our Zoom council meeting in a couple weeks.
Right, and I'm assuming it's going to be virtual. Jason, would you assume our meeting still will be in the virtual setting?
That is correct.
And so for the citizens interested, I'm sure it's going to be a very nice presentation to the city council and your opportunity to get up to speed as we will get up to speed on it. And thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, so moving along, the next question is, has there been any additional work done on the pedestrian underpass at the West Side train station? Has this project been abandoned?
I'll share what I know about it. There's no activity going on that. Obviously, the pandemic has affected a lot of things, including, to say the least, Metra. I understand Metra is only operating at 10%. So, all the projects are in abeyance. Whether it's abandoned or not, I can't say. It's not our call. Well, it's not something that I'm aware of, but right now, Jason is correct. There's nothing that we foresee coming up on that.
Yeah, I actually will turn it back over again to Public Works Superintendent Bob Ellis to provide some additional information.
Thank you, Jason. We are still in the planning phase on this project. We had an engineering study that the city completed a couple of years ago, looking at changing the design, the overall design of the project, from a tunnel underpass to just a standard train bridge with a pedestrian walkway underneath. That will lower the cost substantially, and also give a more open feel. You know, instead of walking through a tunnel, you'll be basically outside, just walking under the bridge. So what we've done since then is we had state money, no city funds, involved to fund a revised phase 1 design study, taking the original study that was done for the tunnel and redoing that as a train bridge project. That has been or is being submitted to IDOT very soon for review. That review will take probably about 8 months for them to complete. At such time, if they review and approve the preliminary design using the train bridge concept, then the city will have to make some decisions about future funding going forward. There will be a substantial cost for phase 2 design, the detailed final design of the bridge, to the tune of right around $750,000. So the city will have to decide whether they want to look at funding that out of city funds or try to find grant funding to pay for the next phase of design and also for construction. So that will be a discussion for a future council meeting, I would imagine, or two, because it is a lot of money. But it is moving forward. The planning is moving forward. It has not slowed down too much, but it will once we get this package submitted. IDOT will take their time to get it reviewed and hopefully approved, and then the city will have to work out the future of the project.
And thank you, Bob. And I'll just add, without speaking certainly on behalf of the council or being too speculative, I think as Alderman Bushman alluded to, the pandemic has changed the equation so significantly for commuter rail operations that I think before the city council would even engage on a conversation about the cost benefit analysis of this project, it's going to be some time before we really not only get through the pandemic, but then as the dust settles, have a better understanding of how this pandemic will have changed the future of commuter rail, whether people are still taking the train 5 days a week to travel into the city or out from the city to our office park here. There are far more questions than answers. And so my sense is that we are probably years away from fully understanding what the long-term implications of this pandemic will be. But I think those are going to be important questions to understand before the council can engage on an appropriate cost-benefit analysis of a project like this. So I do not envision this being a conversation coming anytime imminently before the council.
Bob, we just had another tag-along question to that. Can you talk just briefly in more detail, explain what the train bridge would look like at the station? So are you saying it would be something to the extent of like the freight rail over Kennedy Road over Route 60? So it's an actual bridge that goes up. Okay.
Correct.
The people who
you'll walk under the bridge. It'll be a walkway that will dip down. You'll just walk underneath the bridge. Obviously, it'll have all the safety features of all the other crossings of a similar design that are out there. But it takes a good $3 to $4 million off the tunnel design, the jack and bore of a 14-foot steel tunnel through the ground underneath the live railroad tracks. As you can imagine, it's a bit more of an undertaking than the actual train bridge.
It reminds me of building the little Brio trains on my son's train table.
Right.
We're doing that a lot these days.
Yes.
One thing I'd add to
Go ahead, Ray.
Jason's comments, having gone through issues over this very thing on the underpass and the metro stop and the impact it may have, I guess I'm of the opinion that, it's a matter that does have issues involved in it, does take, going to take some good deliberation if we do go forward with it. And I know the input I've gotten from the citizens is that it may not be the best thing that we do and spend money for. But again, I share Jason's comments that with the impact of the pandemic on the rail system, the commuter system, the intercity system, there's no reason to spin wheels at this time, but let's see what develops. And so I, again, want to reinforce the fact that it's something that will take a very careful study if and when it ever does come up again.
Thank you. We do have one more question. Has there been any substantive discussions about adding turning lanes at the intersection of Waukegan Road and Wesley Road?
I believe there has, and I don't recall the details. Do you have yourself, Jason, or someone that can help us on that? I know it's been talked about in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Public Works Director Mike Thomas could answer this question.
Yes, actually, the project, we have actually talked about it for a number of years. As Bob Els just noted, when we try to obtain grant funding, whether it's through the state or the federal government, we have to go through what's referred to as a phase 1 design, pre-design. Phase 2 is the actual construction drawings. Phase 3 is the actual construction. So phase 1 for this project was just completed about 2 weeks ago. And it includes going southbound on Waukegan. There would be a right-hand turn lane into West Campus. There would be a dedicated left-hand turn lane going eastbound on Wesley. As you're heading north on Waukegan, there would be a dedicated left-hand turn lane into West Campus. And as you are heading west on Wesley, they would have a dedicated right-hand turn lane to go north on Waukegan. That project in today's dollars is approximately $2,650,000. As Bob noted, City Council can decide to apply for a grant for the design and construction. Design will cost about $75,000, or City Council at some point could decide to pursue design, spend the $75,000, go through design itself, and have it ready to apply for a grant at that point. So the good news is that the project has been thought out. There's a basic design with it, and it, along with many, many, many other projects, will be discussed at our upcoming capital meeting. So,
Thank you, Mike.
Thank
Jason?
you. So we have one last, not so much a question, but a comment from an old familiar face. Someone who just said that they joined the party a little late, but commend both of you on the job that you did tonight, and noting that you're both a couple of Zoom pros, and that was Alderman Michelle Moreno.
Thanks.
You, Michelle. We appreciate it. Again, we miss you, but we understand. Anything else, Jason?
There are no additional questions at this time.
I do have one comment I'd like to close, and obviously I'll ask Eileen if she wanted anything to add. And that goes to the point that the city has gone through a difficult period, a challenging period, no different than any other business trying to operate their business under pandemic conditions, keeping their employees and their clientele safe, operating remotely, moving on to a more digital, technical way of doing business. All are major challenges. And here in the city, we have the clientele, our citizens, rightly expecting high standards, and they've been accustomed to high standards. And I'd have to give a heartfelt thanks to the city and its staff for doing a wonderful job dealing with the pandemic and meeting the high standards we expect of them. If anything, you continue to exceed your high standards. So again, thank you, thank the staff, getting everything done and keeping us moving and safe.
Thank you, Ray. I'll just echo my appreciation for the staff and all of the hard work that they're doing. And again, encourage the residents, if you ever have a question or concern, please reach out to us or the city staff member that can answer more specifically, but we're here for you and representing you. And we love you keeping your dollars in Lake Forest. So thanks for being with us tonight.
With that, we will conclude our session. We made it under the time limit this time. So again, thank you. And Eileen and myself, again, thank you very much.